Welcome to this week's Riks Round Up. In the panel today, political commentators Scarlett Karolieva, host and reporter for Riks Europe, and Peter Kleppe, editor-in-chief for Riks Europe. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Today we will be talking about Pavel Durov and the arrest and the German migration debate. But to start off with, we'll talk about Pavel Durov. And Scarlett, could you start off by giving some insights into who Pavel is and his significance?
Pavel is originally from Russia, and he started his career in 2006, where he actually started a platform, Die Contacte, and you can see it as a sort of the first setup for later what would be Telegram. It was a huge success in Russia. It was one of the most used platforms for people to communicate, and he grew immensely in success with this platform. Now, of course, we know that in 2004, there were some problems in Ukraine already. Some years later, there were the protests in Maidan. And the Russian government were actually pressuring him to shut down certain pages that was used to mobilize protesters. Now, Pavel refused to do this because he says, very slim to Elon Musk, that he was, a fighter for the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression. And he refused to censor these certain pages that were used to mobilize the protesters. As you can imagine, Russia was not very happy with it, or better said, the Kremlin wasn't really happy with it. So he was basically forced to sell his last shares into the company, and then he fled to Dubai, where he started Telegram. Now, with his action, he gained a lot of respect in the West. He was basically seen as a hero. The fact that he was standing up against Putin, that he was in favor of Ukraine, in favor of the freedom of speech. And interesting that it turned against him, because now he is arrested in France, as the government of France is basically saying that he didn't cooperate in giving information into certain encrypted chats that would have enabled child pornography, recruitment of terrorists, but also drug trafficking.
And Peter, there has been a lot of confusion surrounding this arrest. Could you explain why it's been so confusing for many people?
Well, of course, many people were saying, look, he's, as Scarlett explained, he's fleeing from Putin, but then the country of Emmanuel Macron arrest him. Now, it's a bit more complicated than that, because Durov also actually has French citizenship. So there's a lot of speculation, many things we do not know, but what we know is that he is indeed being charged for violating, French regulations when it comes to cryptography. Telegram has not disclosed all their codes to the French government, as they should, which, I think it's already questionable whether there should be, legislation like that, ordering companies, to give up their codes. Now, secondly, indeed, the main charge that, of course, is, let's say, quite remarked by many people is that he would have facilitated child pornography. Now, interestingly, after the arrest of Durov, there was a bureaucrat of a French child protection agency who wrote something on LinkedIn explaining how important it was that Durov was arrested, etc. But then he posted a documentary which documented how Instagram was actually used by these criminals to spread child pornography. So it just shows that this is a problem that you have with many platforms, and it's of course important that the authorities, take action against that. But according to Durov, they do comply with many requests from the authorities. Actually, he has been working with Russia as well. He's not such a free speech hero as some people claim him to be. So I think, until proven otherwise, this very much looks like an overreaction by the French authorities. In the first place, Telegram is not fully encrypted. It's only encrypted if one person speaks to another one. So I think he's not the free speech hero, and France is certainly going very far with arresting the owner of a platform. So I think it's just very telling about the state of free speech in the West.
Yeah, I would like to elaborate on Peter on what he said, and I think it's very important for us to look at the bigger picture. Lately, we've been having a lot of discussion about the topic of what can be said online and what cannot be said online. The government's trying to push a bigger agenda of increasing censorship. You know, of course, in this moment, no one is against having certain protocol to protect child pornography from being on the internet. No one wants terrorists to be recruited online. That's not even a debate. The debate here is that we need to be careful that this is not used just to attack terrorists or to attack criminals, but this can also attack normal people that just want to share information or their thoughts. Because at the end of the day, like, who is dictating what can be said and what not? To give a good example, we had Zuckerberg this week that came forward actually admitting that Meta was being pressured by the Biden government to limit certain information that was being said during the COVID pandemic. And I really remember at that time when we said that, that there was certain censorship regarding this topic, it was a conspiracy theory. But it turns out it wasn't. And I don't think it's a coincidence that this week, actually, Zuckerberg came forward after the arrest of Pavlov that he was pressured to limit the freedom of speech with what was being presented to us online and whatnot. So I am not a lawyer. I'm not to say whether Durov is in the bad or in the wrong, but I do think that we should be careful that all of these laws that are now implemented on us are not just there to attack criminals, but also to attack us and the information that is being made available to us.
And moving on to the German migration debate. This debate has become very heated. There was another knife attack. Peter, can you tell us more about this?
In Solingen, during a celebration of the anniversary of the city, an asylum seeker ended up murdering some people with a knife. Interestingly, the Green politicians reacted to that, saying that we should have more regulation of knives, I think, which was telling of how completely out of touch they still are, despite with everything that is happening. Now, this has really triggered a movement in Germany ahead of the elections in Eastern Germany, where the far-right AfD is expected to do well. And the movement can be summed up as Germans saying, enough is enough. I mean, there's been too many of these incidents, and in this case, the perpetrator, he had been ordered to leave Germany after he had committed some crimes, but then somehow he had been able to legally stay in the country. As a result of that, the Greens have now finally conceded that if you are a criminal asylum seeker, you can be sent back to Syria and Afghanistan. And this is also what has happened now. Germany has sent, I think, 28 criminal illegals back to Afghanistan. So it looks like maybe finally the German authorities are understanding that they have to take firmer action against, the consequences of completely chaotic migration policies, where there were, for many people, no checks on whether they were allowed to enter the country or not.
And as Peter mentioned, they in fact sent back 28 Afghans. Scarlett, what else do you think we will see as these debates play out?
Well, I feel like a lot of people, including myself, are infuriated with the rhetoric that we keep hearing over and over again. Because if we look at Schulz now, he's giving us rhetoric that's basically saying, look, we cannot have stricter controls. We have EU laws that we have to respect. There are certain treaties that we have to follow. But at the end of the day, the problem is that these illegal immigrants that come to Europe always find a loophole to stay, even though they're legally they need to be sent home. They always find a new loophole where they can renew the asylum procedure, and it's having real consequences. When are we going to say that enough is enough? It's an issue we're not only seeing in Germany. We have cases in the Netherlands that people are staying when they're already having the final verdict that they need to leave. And I hope this will be a wake-up call for the next German elections.
And Peter, there is a sense of urgency since this attack that obviously resulted in this very fast decision. Do you believe that this urgency will have a longer momentum?
It's hard to say, to be honest. We have seen moments like this before. Remember that back in 2005, 19 years ago, I think it was 2005, Angela Merkel, the German chancellor then, declared that the multicultural society had failed. Politicians tend to go quickly to the order of the day when, another issue has been controlling the attention. So then what is necessary, I think, is that at the European level, a decision is taken to follow the migration and asylum policies of Australia. For 2 decades now, Australia has decided that if you try to enter the country illegally, you can still apply for asylum, but you have to do it outside of the territory of Australia. So that's the only solution that so far has worked for Western countries to stop the enormous pressure from people understandably trying to make it into the West. These people are not guilty, to be fair. But European politicians are still too politically correct to go there. A few months ago, before the European Parliament elections, there were, I think, 19 leaders out of 27 that had already been in favor of outsourcing of asylum processing. But as I mentioned, quickly they don't follow through when there's no actual pressure from public opinion. So I'm skeptical that this will endure. Given the problematic policies, we will sadly see a lot more of these incidents to come. So I think politicians just need to finally abandon the taboos they have been holding for way too long. And simply do what another Western democracy, Australia, has successfully done for 2 decades now.
Well, Peter, I would like to interrupt you, and because you said, the people that are coming from Syria or Afghanistan fleeing the war, of course, it's understandable that they're fleeing a terrible authoritarian regime. But it's madness to accuse them, if they are committing a crime, for them to stay in a country. I think it makes sense for that they're being sent back home, even though the Taliban is actually now governing and ruling, and that might have disastrous consequences. If I would go to Afghanistan and I would live there, I would have to comply with their rules, and I would not even think about doing something so illegal or criminal. Then I would have to bear the consequences. Rebecca made a very interesting short where she elaborated on how the Greens are not actually trying to actually help the Afghanistans that were committing these crimes to stay into the country. That is complete madness.
Thank you, Scarlett Karolieva and Peter Klepper, for your insights.
Thank you, Rebecca.
And thank you for watching Riks Europe.